It is a sobering warning and a reality check from the director of the CDC.
We are in the time frame now that probably for the next 60 to 90 days, we're going to have more deaths per day than we had in 9/11 or we had in Pearl Harbor.
2,403 killed in the attack on Pearl Harbor, a day that will live in infamy. 2,977 killed in the 9/11 attacks, a day we promise to never forget. Meanwhile, the deaths of more than 3,300 Americans from the coronavirus were reported yesterday alone. More than 3,100 Americans died Wednesday. More than 2,800 died the Thursday before that. Days that may not live in infamy, dates we will, in all likelihood, forget. Joining us now is the professor of psychology at Georgetown University, Andrea Bonnier. She is also the author of Detox Your Thoughts. And with us also, clinical psychologist and associate professor at Touro College of Osteopathic Medicine, Jeff Gardier. Andrea, we are experiencing a mass casualty event daily in the U.S. We have lost nearly 300,000 Americans in less than a year, more than double the number of Americans lost in World War I. And yet it doesn't feel like it. Americans aren't really acting like it. Why?
Yeah, I think we've become desensitized. These losses, these numbers are staggering. And yet, because we've been at this for so long and each day has seen types of losses that we hadn't seen before, we just start to be numbed to it. And if it doesn't affect us personally, it's very easy to depersonalize these losses. It's also become very politically polarized, even to talk about the virus in certain ways. And I think that affects it as well.
When you talk about being numb to it, is that because of how humans are wired to cope?
Yeah, that's part of it. We can't always carry with us the emotional turmoil of things that are happening outside of our circle. We have to tune out certain things in order to cope with everyday life. But on the other hand, I think we're really reaching a point where many of us are affected by this personally, and it's going to get so much worse. And that's the danger, if the numbness actually makes us tune out the precautions that we need to be taking.
Jeff, we witnessed 9/11 live. We can immediately see the impact of, other big disasters, natural disasters like hurricanes, fires, or, other tragedies like mass shootings. But in this case, we hear from family members who've lost loved ones. We hear from doctors and nurses who are just overwhelmed right now, but we don't necessarily see the mass casualties. Do you think that makes the impact different?
I think so, and that's why I think here we can talk about how the silence of this kind of pandemic, in the way that it kills people, they're isolated, they're by themselves. It impacts the immediate family members, but for the rest of us who don't see it, the professor is right. If we don't have people in our own orbit, then it doesn't impact us as much. I think the other thing that's going on is almost a learned helplessness. I mean, let's face it, let's be real about this. I mean, there has been really no leadership for the past several months from the federal government. It's been politicized, and therefore we haven't taken this as seriously as it needs to be. But I can tell you that people in the African American community, Black and brown people who are disproportionately affected by COVID, are paying attention because they're the ones who are suffering as much as others, if not more.
A study just released yesterday found that from a single person at a single conference in Boston, that one person seems to have been responsible for 245,000 cases. I can't think of a better argument for social distancing and mask wearing, and yet some Americans don't seem to see their role in combating the spread of this virus. Instead, they protest these restrictions and the idea of having to wear a mask. Andrea, why isn't this virus being viewed as a common enemy?
Yeah, I think Dr. Gardier is exactly right. The tone could have been set from the top months and months and months ago. And instead, the tone became divisive. There was denial, and there was the attitude that we don't have personal responsibility to take to protect our neighbors and to protect folks in our community who are more vulnerable. And I think really it is showing on a massive scale how little decisions can spread. And when the social norm is going in the wrong direction, it just takes off and it can do so much damage.
When I think about the mental and emotional impact on the vulnerable, like our children, I want to read you just clips of letters. The U.S. Postal Service, they shared these letters that children have written to Santa this year, and they reveal the toll this pandemic is taking on these children. One child named Jonah writes, "Dear Santa, I don't want anything for Christmas, but I would like to ask you if you can do me a favor. Can you please find a cure for COVID-19 and give it to us to save the world? Thank you." Another child writes, "P.S. I'm sorry if I've been bad. It's really hard because of COVID-19 and online school. I'm trying to be good. Hope you understand." Andrea, and both of you, I really want to get both your takes. But I'll start with you, Andrea. Do you think this is going to have a generational impact?
I hope that we can mitigate that impact really by letting our kids get the help they need, by talking with them, by listening to their feelings, by finding ways for them to show that we're going to learn from this and that we're going to move forward stronger than before. So I really hope that although there's no doubt this is a huge disruption, that we can find ways to help these kids be more resilient because of it.
Jeff, what's your take about these letters?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a game of catch up. The experts are saying academically and socially, interpersonally, the children have suffered. We tend to see kids as being resilient, but I can tell you with my young patients and as a father of 6, kids of all ages, I mean, we're talking very young, right up to teenagers, have been devastated psychologically, emotionally, academically, interpersonally by this virus. Their world has been turned upside down. And as parents, we need to listen. As academic institutions, we need to do everything we can to give them what they need, especially when we go back to some sort of a normal or even a new normal. There's a lot of catching up to do.
Okay, well, I could talk to you both for much, much longer. I think it's such an important conversation. I really appreciate your expertise and your thoughts and perspective on all of this. Jeff Gardier, Andrea Bonnier, I appreciate it. Thank you.